welcome back to my channel. So, today is going to be a little bit different. Today, I wanted to address some of your most important questions, something that a lot of you guys had sent my way, and overall, just wanted to get answers on. This is something that's really crucial for somebody that's dealing with depression, anxiety, or ADHD. And I thought it would be a great idea to create these single videos addressing some of your most and probably biggest concerns when it comes to managing your home. So today's topic is, how did decluttering help out or improve my mental health? And it's a lot easier to explain than it is maybe to show. It's a difficult feeling to explain because, as daunting as it is to declutter, it is almost a necessary difficult experience to go through. For me, I didn't really know that I was dealing with ADHD until very recently when I was diagnosed. I felt that most of my anxiety just came from my regular anxiety that I had been diagnosed with for almost 6 years now. But there were certain behaviors that I exhibit that were not typical of your of your anxiety or depression. The behaviors were complete and utter disregard of time lapse. Time pretty much was non-existent to me. Hyperfocus was another one. I had these tendencies of wanting something perfect. And that was the best way I could describe it to my therapist, the need for perfection. The sensation I had whenever I organized the clutter or set up an area, it didn't feel right. And ultimately, the only word I can think of was, it wasn't perfect. What I didn't know is that it wasn't releasing dopamine like some activities would for most people. And so, as much as it didn't seem perfect to me, it really was just the lack of dopamine that I was getting from such activities. So, today I am going to touch on how it became a good habit, how it started helping my mental health, and really why it's important to start with a decluttering plan when it comes to reaching a more manageable home. And so, if this is you and you are trying to find ways and you are tired of doing everything and it feels like you're not doing anything, then this is going to be the video for you. As always, I encourage you guys to comment down below if there has been things that have worked for you that could potentially help others. You don't necessarily have to have ADHD or depression or anxiety, but if you feel like what you've done has helped you, by all means share it in the comment below for everybody who's seeking answers. I think ultimately there isn't a one fix all to the problem. There's always going to be a variation of things that we could all benefit from. So I encourage you to go down into the comments and share what has been successful to you so that maybe others can find that success as well. So let's start with something very simple, and that is going to be with habit forming. For me, habits were much more easy and more manageable than routines. I dislike routine. I dislike the thought of a routine, and I dislike just processing what a routine requires. Why do I dislike it so much? Well, if I'm being honest, it's the thought of having to do something repetitiveness. When I speak to my therapist, the first thing he and she would suggest were that routines were monotonous. They were just not something that people enjoyed. And in reality, even those without ADHD may not find it enjoyable, but they found it to be more achievable. Now, for those of us with ADHD, a routine is so incredibly boring that we just genuinely don't feel the need for it. and it could harm our environment. It could really hurt the way we function. One example I can think of for myself, and it's a little embarrassing to admit, but I'm being honest and vulnerable with you guys here, is at night, my nighttime routine fails a lot. There are times where I just have to remind myself to brush my teeth for my own health. But having like a skincare routine or something that I repeatedly do every single night, it's so boring. And it's not the type of boring where like you're sitting in a room reading a book you don't care for. It's not that type of boring. This boring is the type that your brain just locks out so much that you genuinely just fail to partake in it. So instead of calling it routines or schedules, my therapist recommended habits. Now, habits are incredibly powerful. I have been listening to a podcast lately, which I'll list down for you guys to check out. And in the podcast, they talk about habits and how in marketing, huge companies that use habit forming techniques to sell their products to you. One in particular stood out a lot to me, and it was actually for Febreze. This was a long time ago when it first got created. They basically struggled to sell the product because even though it was a really good product, no one had the habit of using it. They were so blind to smells. They were used to the smells at home, whether they had pets or smokers or whatever it may be. There was just no need for this particular spray. And it wasn't until they formed almost like this blind habit into people that, hey, your house might smell bad and you might be nose blind to it. Let's create a habit of cleaning it and spraying it down so you feel like it's clean. Well, eventually people, picked up on it and they decided that it was a good idea to clean their house and then spray it down to make it smell clean. So, the power of habits has been proven on and on again, even with huge companies. Now, a habit does take time and it does take some mild repetition, but it's a lot less daunting than a full routine. When I decided to take on habits to manage my home, I knew that I needed to make two simple habits. The first two habits were going to be everyday tasks, non negotiables that the house absolutely needed. The first task, not letting the trash get overflown. Now, this was simple in my case because most of those chores ended up being my husband's. But also, if I ever saw one overflow, I made the conscious effort to take it out. The second habit was focusing on dishes. Dishes can be so incredibly daunting, and a lot of people hate doing dishes. So that second habit was going to be to never let the sink stay full. Eventually, I made sure those became routines. But that really wasn't until I had a good amount of habits formed towards the time where maybe 10 habits were formed. And then at that point, I knew that I had more of a schedule. I didn't want to admit it because I was afraid of calling it a schedule. I felt that if I called it a schedule, I would be less likely to do it. So instead, I continued letting myself think these were just habits, habits that I needed to maintain my home and to feel better about the situation or my mental health or just in general for my family to be able to enjoy their home. Now, once you form that habit is sometimes, I should say, sometimes it can be tricky depending on the behaviors that you experience. For some people, breaking the habits is probably not the best. And so it's very important to acknowledge the behavior that you are displaying. If you feel like breaking your habits makes you feel so chaotic and uncomfortable that you don't want to do this, then it's probably time to gently remind yourself that a habit is just that. And if you need break or don't feel good, it's completely okay and human to not go through with your habit. Now, a lot of people tend to think that when you declutter your entire house, you're going to feel this sense of relief. And you are. You will feel a sense of relief at first. The second emotion that sits in is fear of getting back to where you were. And I can tell you, you're more than likely not to, unless you're going through something incredibly traumatic. But the one thing you cannot forget is once you declutter, you must declutter again and again and again. However, the following declutterings are not going to be anywhere as difficult as the first one was. It's part of maintenance, really. And so when I started my decluttering journey, at, I knew right away it wasn't going to be a one fix all. And so when you go into this, just know there's no rush. No one is waiting at the finish line. All you got to do is start somewhere and continue that path. And little by little, you'll find really quick habits to get you through that decluttering. Overall, I will say that decluttering has absolutely 100% made my mental health better. I feel lighter mentally. I feel like I can conquer things I probably couldn't before, and I feel less anxious. I do feel like I can do more, which is nice. And so I encourage you to take baby steps and declutter your home. Don't feel the overwhelming sensation of getting everything done at once. Baby steps can become big steps. And so I hope this video helps you and encourages you to start. And I welcome you back into my next video where I will discuss big questions about those of us dealing with ADHD, anxiety, or depression. And as always, I thank you so much for your support. I would highly appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, shared and liked, and share your thoughts with anyone else that might be dealing with this. Until next time, bye.